I had always believed I could handle life on my own. My apartment in downtown Chicago was modern, sleek, and quiet, a perfect reflection of my independence. As the owner of a small but successful art gallery, I spent most of my time managing exhibitions, meeting artists, and occasionally entertaining clients who were far too impressed with my curated taste. Until the day Matthew Hayes appeared. He wasn't there for coffee or art. He was there for me. Miss Bennet. His voice was low, controlled, authoritative. Yes, I asked, eyebrow raised, already sensing that my routine was about to change. You've received threats. I'm here to ensure your safety, he said. The calm intensity in his brown eyes made me shiver in a way I didn't expect. I blinked. Threats? Me? I wasn't a politician or a celebrity. My gallery had no secrets, except maybe the occasional spicy argument about abstract art. Bodyguards aren't usually necessary for me, I said, trying to smile. Matthew didn't smile. I'm here because someone thinks otherwise. You'll thank me later. He was tall, muscular, confident without being arrogant. There was a precision in his movements, a quiet awareness. I hated to admit it, but I was intrigued, and maybe a little scared, not of him, but of what it might feel like to have someone watching me so closely. The first week was awkward. Matthew shadowed me everywhere. Gallery openings, client dinners, even my morning runs along Lake Michigan. I tried to ignore him. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it was always concise, intelligent, slightly teasing. You really need to slow down on these lattes, he said one morning as we walked toward my car. Heart rate spikes aren't good for anyone. I laughed despite myself. I drink them because they're delicious, not because I need a health lecture from my bodyguard. He didn't reply, just offered a small smile. At night, I realized how comforting his presence had become. Even the simple act of locking my apartment door felt easier, knowing he was right outside. And yet every glance, every brush of his hand against mine when passing things felt electric. One evening, after a gallery gala, a minor incident occurred. A suspicious man loitered near the gallery exit. Matthew reacted instinctively, guiding me behind a pillar, eyes sharp, body tense. My heart raced, not just from fear, but from watching him. His controlled movements, protective instincts, and quiet confidence made my pulse hammer in a strange, unfamiliar way. Are you okay? He asked, his hand brushing my arm ever so slightly. Yes, I whispered. But inside, I was anything but calm. We laughed later about it. Just a nervous joke. But I noticed how his gaze lingered when I spoke. And I caught myself leaning slightly toward him. Something was happening. Something dangerous, irresistible, and unspoken. Matthew started staying longer at my apartment, not just for security, but I couldn't explain it. We shared meals, discussed art, watched movies on the couch. His presence was magnetic. One rainy evening, he adjusted my blanket while I worked late on gallery paperwork. His fingers grazed my shoulder. The contact sent a shiver down my spine. I can't believe I'm sitting here with my bodyguard, I said, half laughing, half flustered. He looked at me, almost amused, almost dangerous. And yet, you don't mind. I didn't respond. Later, when I poured myself a glass of wine, he watched silently from the kitchen doorway. His gaze made my heart race and my thoughts messy. It was late. The city lights glimmered outside my apartment window. We had been watching an old movie together. He sat next to me, far enough to respect boundaries, yet close enough that the warmth of his body made the air around me tense. I reached for my phone.
He reached for mine.
Our hands touched briefly. Electricity. Grace, he whispered, his voice lower than usual. I looked up. His eyes darkened with something unspoken. Desire, concern, care. Matthew, I started. He leaned closer, and I felt the pull. But he stopped, inches away, respecting the unspoken rule we hadn't named. That night, I lay awake thinking about his lips, his hands, his scent, and how ridiculously impossible it was to feel safe and turned on at the same time. A week later, the threat became real. Someone tried breaking into my apartment. Matthew's reaction was swift, controlled, protective. I hid behind the couch, heart in my throat, and watched him handle the situation with precision. After the police left, he held me tightly. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheek. "I won't let anything happen to you," he whispered. I couldn't stop myself. I kissed him. Just once. Tentative, electric, a spark of everything I had been holding back. He froze. Then slowly, deliberately, kissed me back. Deep, controlled, sensual but restrained. That night changed everything. The walls between us shattered. We didn't rush. We explored each other in subtle ways. Hand brushes, shared meals, lingering touches, stolen kisses in the kitchen. Matthew respected me, my independence, my space. But when he held me, the world disappeared. The city became our playground. Quiet rooftops, late-night walks, secret dinners. Every touch was charged. Every glance a promise. Every moment together was a mix of protection and longing. Even love needed laughter. One night, after an intense day, he made me a sandwich shaped like a heart. "Do you take this as a peace offering or a declaration?" I teased. He smirked. "Both. And it comes with the promise that I'm allowed to steal your fries whenever I want." I laughed so hard I cried. That night, we collapsed on the couch, holding each other, knowing life was chaotic, but fun, just like us. Months passed. The danger faded. The desire didn't. Matthew became my anchor, my thrill, my comfort. We had a routine, me and my art, him by my side. We shared whispers at 2 a.m., soft touches and laughter. Our love was slow, sensual, and playful. He teased me, I teased him back. We argued about silly things. And then, we made up with kisses that lingered, burning just enough to make life electric. The sun had set hours ago, but the city's lights made the apartment feel alive. I was sitting at my gallery desk, reviewing the invitations for the upcoming exhibition. Matthew sat across from me, legs stretched out, arms folded loosely, his presence filling the room like a quiet, steady storm. I tried to focus on the papers, but the warmth radiating from him made it impossible. My heart had a rhythm that matched the subtle tension between us. He had been my bodyguard for months now, and yet every day, I discovered new reasons to be drawn to him. "You're quiet," he said suddenly, breaking my thoughts. His voice was low, measured, the kind of voice that made you lean in, even when you weren't supposed to. "I'm thinking," I replied cautiously, not meeting his eyes. I didn't want to admit the truth, that I'd been thinking about him in ways I probably shouldn't. "About work?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not exactly." He raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his chair. "Grace." That single use of my name made my stomach flutter. He was closer than usual, and the dim light cast shadows on his face, emphasizing his jawline, the slight curve of his lips when he almost smiled. I caught myself staring at him. More than once. "Matthew," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "I've been meaning to tell you something." He tilted his head, his eyes sharp, expectant. There was no teasing this time, just the intense, protective look that had kept me safe from countless imagined dangers. I paused, gathering courage. "Oh, like you. More than I probably should. And I can't stop thinking about you, even when you're just sitting there reading or looking at me like that." For a moment, he said nothing. My heart thudded painfully in my chest, unsure if I had just made a mistake. Then he leaned forward slowly, closing the distance between us. "I've been waiting for you to say that," he whispered. His words were electric, sending a shiver down my spine. My breath caught. "I've tried to keep it professional," he continued, voice low, deliberate. "But every time I see you, Grace, I feel like I'm on fire. And I don't want to hide it anymore." The honesty in his eyes was breathtaking. I had never felt such intensity, such raw emotion, without fear, judgment, or pressure. He simply felt real. We stayed like that for a long minute, inches apart, breathing the same air. Then, slowly, almost hesitantly, our lips met. It wasn't rushed. It was deliberate, sensual, the kind of kiss that made your entire body feel alive. I couldn't remember the last time I felt so seen, so desired, and yet safe. The paradox of Matthew, protective yet intensely passionate, was consuming me. When we finally pulled away, his forehead rested against mine. "Grace," he murmured, "you have no idea what you do to me." "I think I do," I whispered back, a mischievous smile forming despite my racing heart. That night, we talked for hours about fears, past mistakes, dreams. Each revelation made me love him more. Each confession deepened the connection. We weren't just bodyguard and client anymore. We were something far more dangerous and exhilarating. The following weeks were an exquisite torture. Matthew was always near, always attentive, yet always respectful of boundaries. Every brush of his hand, every protective gesture, every glance carried an undercurrent of desire. It started small. Hand on my back guiding me through a crowded gallery, a lingering touch while passing documents, a whispered compliment in the dead of night. The tension between us was palpable, a constant hum that neither of us could escape. One evening, after a particularly stressful day with a demanding client, I sank onto my couch. Matthew was sitting beside me, reading quietly. I could feel the heat radiating from him, the faint scent of his cologne mingling with the faint aroma of my candles. "Rough day?" he asked softly, not looking up. "You have no idea," I said, letting out a long sigh. He shifted closer, and I felt his thigh brush against mine. It was accidental, of course, but the effect on me was immediate. My pulse quickened. "Grace," he murmured, his lips dangerously close to my ear. "You don't know what you do to me." I swallowed hard. "Nor do you," I whispered back. It was a game we played, teasing, testing limits, exploring desires without crossing the line completely. The slow burn was maddening. I wanted him in ways I hadn't anticipated, yet the respect and restraint he showed made me crave more. One night, after a tense week, I decided to test him. I poured wine for both of us and leaned slightly closer. "Do you ever regret being here?" I asked, letting my fingers brush his hand intentionally. Matthew's eyes darkened, lips quirking into that infuriatingly charming smile. "Not for a second. And if I did," he added, voice low, "I'd still be here." The honesty and the heat in that moment made me shiver. It was clear. We weren't just flirting or indulging in tension. We were falling, dangerously and completely. That night ended with a shared bath, not explicit, but intimate. Towels pressed close, whispered laughter, gentle touches. We explored boundaries, testing each other's comfort, building trust and passion. The slow escalation was intoxicating. Matthew didn't just want me, he respected me. And that made every stolen touch, every lingering kiss, every whispered word all the more potent. By the time the threat had passed, our relationship had transformed entirely. The danger that had initially brought Matthew into my life had faded, but the bond between us had deepened into something far more permanent. We had routines, not boring routines, but ones filled with warmth, intimacy, and playful teasing. I woke up to breakfast in bed occasionally, Matthew making pancakes shaped like hearts. I teased him mercilessly when he tried to act serious. "You really think I can't make a pancake look like a swan?" he challenged one morning, flour dusting his hair. I laughed so hard, syrup spilling onto the sheets, that I could barely answer. "A swan? You mean a pancake blob, Matthew." He grinned, flour-covered fingers reaching for mine. "And you love it." I did. I loved him. Every protective glance, every flirtatious smirk, every sensual touch that set my skin on fire. We took long drives without destinations, laughed in the rain, danced in the kitchen, whispered secrets in the dark. The sensuality was playful, the romance intense, but there was also humor, so much laughter that our hearts felt light despite the weight of everything we had faced. One night, after an entire evening of teasing, kisses, and laughter, Matthew looked at me, eyes soft and sincere. "You're insane," he said. "Maybe," I replied, smirking, "but you love it." He shook his head, laughter escaping him, and kissed me deeply. Passionate, tender, and full of the promise of countless adventures to come. The final touch of fun? A weekend trip where he insisted on pretending to be my chauffeur, complete with a fake uniform and exaggeratedly polite greetings at restaurants. I couldn't stop laughing. Even in our most sensual, intimate moments, he never let the joy leave. And that, I realized, was love. Safe, thrilling, passionate, and utterly, delightfully unpredictable. Matthew wasn't just my protector anymore. He was my partner, my confidant, my love, and my friend, all wrapped into one irresistible package. Life was no longer about threats or boundaries. It was about us, Grace and Matthew, a perfectly chaotic, romantic, playful duo navigating love, lust, and laughter together.